What just happened?
Welcome back, everybody. Oh.
Trying to fix my my hair and my headphones, make sure it looks good.
You about ready?
Yeah. This is a series for financial advisors. We offer easy-to-implement marketing and practice management advice. This is the Stephen and Kevin Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode number 104 of the Stephen and Kevin Show. Today, we're going to be talking about 10 service principles.
Yeah, it should be an interesting episode. We decided we each come to the table with 5 different service principles that we think financial advisors would benefit from hearing. But we may have some overlap. I'm curious. I don't know what you brought to the table. You don't know what I brought to the table.
No, coming in blind, but I think it'll be good. Different perspectives. And I think that's what, as we've talked about and prepared for this session, service is different to different people based on our own experiences.
True.
What you perceive as good service may not be exactly what I perceive as good service. What I value is not necessarily what you value.
Yep.
Our experiences as consumers shape that, but also our experiences as business people, that our current job shape that, our previous job shape that. And we had a good discussion prior to this about past jobs and what they taught us about service.
Yeah, and you and I both our first jobs for both of us were working at a car wash, right? I worked at the Santa Fe Car Wash in Riverside, California, which during the summer, I'm telling you, it was hot as hell at that car wash. It was tough. It was not easy work.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for me, wheels and bumpers, quality establishment. But you learn a lot out there. You learn a lot about earning tips,
Yes.
which is interesting for the first time in your life.
Yep.
And you learn to be a better tipper, I think, than you would have if you never had a service job.
Definitely. Did you? So I don't know how your car wash was set up, but did you work in the front or the back? For us, it was like there was a front area where you vacuumed, and then there was a back area, and in the back area is where you would polish up the car, shine it up, and that's where you got the tips.
Yeah, you don't want the vacuums. That's the sucker's work.
I started on vacuums, and I got promoted. It's sucky work. Is that on purpose? Was that a joke? But one thing I did learn from that is that once I got promoted to the back where I could make some tips.
Big timer.
They want you to pump out the cars, right? Quick. I feel like I learned that I don't need to do that. I actually make more money if I slowed down. And I would figure out whose car I had, right? And I would try and park the car by them, and I would just take my time. I remember this guy came up to me once and he said, "Man, your car must be meticulous." Because I was working on his, I was spending a lot of time on it, but I got some really good tips that way.
Yeah, I think the incentive is for the car wash itself to pump them through because that's how they make money.
Sure.
And the incentive for the employee there is to not do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Love it. Then I moved on to the wide world of debt collections in college.
Really, really good service industry.
Yeah, well, you learn from the good and bad. When you think of debt collections, you think of the worst in customer service.
Right.
Because that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of empathy. You're kind of there for that mission of collecting money from people.
It's a full day of confrontation.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But you learn a lot from that too, as to how you should not really treat people. I mean, it's not like that's a nasty job to where you're being mean to people that you call, but it's not like you're being empathetic, being a great listener, really trying to help them work through their problems. The mission is kind of I need you to pay your bill.
Right.
So it's just a weird dynamic. You wouldn't, I'll put it this way, as a financial advisor, you wouldn't go to the call center of debt collectors to recruit your service talent in your office.
Oh, that's a really good point. I mean, that takes a special type of person to be a debt collector, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure.
But it paid well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think the average tenure there was 2 or 3 months. So they had to pay well.
How long did you stick around?
I was there for a couple of years.
Okay. I waited tables. I did that for a while. I loved doing that. And that one's all about service, right? That experience, obviously the food has to be good, but that whole experience when someone's coming in, a customer's coming in, is it's really important. And so I feel like I learned a lot there. And I always admire people who've worked in that industry because it's not easy. You're dealing with the public on a regular basis. You're dealing with people who just do all kinds of crazy things. I remember people eating like their full dessert and then saying it was no good and they need their money back. I'm like, you just ate it all, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like you deal with that kind of stuff. I remember one time I was holding a tray of Pellegrino, like the bottled water. This is one of those moments that just sticks in your mind. And I was holding this tray and I was walking it out to a table. And as I took one off, they all slid off. And they just came crashing down and they landed on this lady's foot. And I'm telling you, it was one of those moments where I just wanted to leave.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you just go home after
No,
that?
I wanted to leave. But, you learned about how to deal with those types of issues and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think, relating back to what we do professionally now and working with financial advisors, you see service at a much higher level.
Yes.
I would say across the board, financial advisor service models, we were giving funny examples of car washes and debt collections. You all are naturally pretty good at this because I think it has been reinforced over the years that this is really important to retaining clients, giving them a great experience, having them refer you to friends. So I would say generally, this industry is pretty good at it.
This industry is great at it.
But I would say, in terms of us all, working on our craft and us all getting better, some teams, some organizations are way more methodical about this, way more consistent with their service than others.
Yeah, and when they're bringing on new team members, right, they're training them in a certain way to be, to elevate their level of service. So I think that's important as well. So even if you're a financial advisor right now and you're listening and you're thinking, I'm really good at that, like that's something I'm great at. What about your other team members? How good are they?
Yeah, I would like to point out that some of you listening right now are lousy at this.
Ooh, you're probably right.
Just for the sake of numbers, it's a bell curve.
There is someone listening right now who's like, ooh, I'm not good at that.
There's somebody listening to this right now who's like, I call my clients back, generally. It's like, not many of you, but I'm sure there's a couple. But what we're trying to do is elevate it to a place to where the service that you provide is planned for, it is written down, it is executed, you and your team is held accountable for doing it. And you could write a thesis on it if you're in grad school. That's what we're looking for. So the best teams that we've ever worked with from a service standpoint are always refining. They're always getting a little bit better, incorporating one idea or another. Hopefully today's podcast is helpful in that regard. We'll move on from talking about our childhood and earning tips.
But it's so much fun. It's fun to talk about that stuff, Stephen.
It is. Well, you look back at pictures like the one that was flashed up on the screen a moment ago. It was like almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're listening and you don't see it, it's like Steven sitting back in a chair with his hat on backwards, twirling a pen in his hand and just collecting debts. I
was not only an excellent debt collector, Kevin, I was pretty cool doing it.
I bet.
Somehow over the last 20 years, I've lost that, but
Actually, I feel like that is, again, sorry, not to talk about that job so much, but it's just such a unique job. I feel like it's one that numbs you to having to have tough conversations. So
yeah, for sure. It's how I met my wife as well.
Oh, wow.
She collected debts.
Wow. Did she stick around as long as you?
She did.
Jeez.
She probably stuck around because of me. But
okay. Now we know the story.
Don't ask her. She may have a different opinion on that. All right. So I'm going to start it off today. And we're talking about 10 service principles, unless some of these overlap since we didn't pre-plan for them to be different. In that case, it'll be 9 or 8. But we're starting with the notion of 10.
Yep.
My first one is that you should treat your team like you want them to treat your clients. So we have worked over the years with financial advisors who would outwardly say, oh, I'm great with my clients. My clients love me. But you see the way that they interact with their team and you think, gosh, that's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Like, are you able to change your persona that quickly from barking at team members to all of a sudden being a yes, ma'am, a yes, sir, a how can I help you? Is there anything else we could be doing better type of a persona?
Yeah. And are they going to want to do that, right? Like if I'm a team member who's getting barked at, which I think is that's a great word. Am I going to want to treat clients that well, right? I think it trickles down.
Yeah. If you view, and this is typically the temperament of this kind of team leader. It's somebody who views themselves as a type A, decisive,
yes,
get her done. And you see a lot of turnover in those teams.
Yes.
Because they're not doing things like, their good behavior with clients is taking an interest in their clients, learning about them, an occasional small gift, spending time over meals, that sort of thing. Their behavior with their teammates is more command and control.
Yeah.
There's no concern about the person as an individual. It's more about like, here's what I need you to do and how fast I need you to do it. Get it done. back in my day, here's how this worked.
I know those types of conversations, and I agree. I think it drives people away, but also, yeah, they're not going to want to serve clients at a high level if they're being treated in that manner. So I think it's a great one. Okay, the second one here, and I had no idea which direction we were going to go with this because we could have gone really broad and we could have said, let's talk about, service model, like really broad, or we could have be really specific. Mine's kind of a specific one.
It's a lot of buildup. I hope it's good.
It's okay. So I was, recently, last week I was on vacation, right? And my wife and I were in Chicago and we stayed at the Ritz, right? And the Ritz is known for what? Service, right? It's like, it's the epitome of great service. And overall it was a great experience. We're at 10 o'clock at night. I'm upstairs, first night, I'm brushing my teeth and I'm like, I'm an avid flosser. I'm like, I need floss. I don't have floss. I forgot to pack floss. So I called down to the front desk and I said, hey, curious, do you guys happen to have any floss? And the guy who answers the phone says, nah. He said, nah. And I was like, what?
You like a double take, like you called the wrong number or something?
I did think so. I was like, oh. And I said, what, you don't have anything or, anything, no floss or anything like that? And I said, no, like toothbrush kit or something. He said, nah, we ain't got nothing like that down here. And I was like, okay. And I hung up, right? But to me, that was not a great experience. So here's my lesson with this one is don't be too casual with your language. I think that when you're thinking about high level service, there's a time and place to kind of elevate your language a little bit. I mean, he could have said, I'm so sorry, sir. Unfortunately, we don't have anything right now. He could have said that, but when he said, nah, that was it's like he was talking to his buddy.
Right.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Don't be too casual. So when you're thinking about team members, or if you're catching a team member who's talking to someone and you hear them using language, it's kind of too I don't know how to say it, too casual is the only way I can say it. You need to correct them on that.
Yeah, and that's a weird and awkward thing to do sometimes, that when you overhear a team member's conversation and it doesn't go exactly like you planned, if you don't have the habit of giving them feedback, good or bad, it can be a little bit awkward to bring that up.
Yeah.
But over time, if you're not going to help groom them, who is?
That's right. And so if I were the manager at that Ritz, if I would have overheard that, I would have said, hey, let's not use that. Let's refine your language a little bit.
We're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.
That's their whole mantra, right? They have it on business cards. It's not nah. Anyway.
All right. Number 2. And I think this one is one of the biggest for me, but I would say in terms of service, focus on response times.
That's a good one.
And what I mean by that is just, and this can vary by tier of client. We talk a lot about segmentation and service models and that sort of thing. I would say for your top tier of clients, it is a drop everything mentality. That if they call with something they need, any kind of request it is, it's like, all right, we're on it, all hands on deck. Let's get this turned around for them.
Yeah.
I love that. Anybody that I've ever worked with, any other professional who gives me that kind of attention, I remember it.
Yeah.
And I recommend them more. It shapes my whole perception of them, that I know if I can call, fill in the blank, and they're going to call me right back if I don't catch them, that's a huge asset.
And I'll tell you, I think that's a mantra that I think you do really well. I think with anyone, if you were dealing with outside vendors or anything, I feel you're always fast. And I remember when I started, right? And Steven started before me, right? And he trained me on a lot of things. And I remember you saying they love at XYZ company when I get back to them really quick. I remember you saying that to me multiple times, and they do. They're like, wow, because even in their world that they live in, this very corporate environment, they're not used to that.
Yeah.
Shoot them an email and you got an email right back with an answer.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder. I remember having that conversation with you, and you do, when you give somebody that just immediacy, they love it. It's something I could probably do a better job of now. You get away from things like that from time to time. But it's I think also
impressive.
I agree, and I think it's also partly a generational thing, that when you're dealing with younger and younger clients, they're from a world of immediate response, chat on the website, text messaging back and forth. There's more, more of a sense of this ought to be done quickly.
Yeah, Slack messages, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it quick. Okay, that's a great one. All right, the next one I have, and again, I'm going a little out of the box with these. But this is a lesson that I learned waiting tables. And the owner of this restaurant, kind of ingrain this in me, and I'm not good at it. I'm actually terrible at this, to try and be self-aware here. But what he said is that, when you are with the customer, nothing else exists. And I was like, what does he mean by that? He's like, when you're at their table and you're chatting with them about what they're ordering or whatever it is, he's like, you need to tune out everything else. They're the focus. Be in the moment with them. So like, someone's popping their head in, asking you a question. It's like, hey, that's not the time, right? I'm with them right now. And he said, just be more in the moment with them, and they can tell. Like, they can tell if you're present or not.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
Yeah.
It's good. It's tough.
He really ingrained that in me. Because I was like, oh, what's next? Like, I'm looking at another table who that person needs water, and this person, it's like, no. You're here with them. Focus on them.
It's like sometimes when we're in meetings together back here. And
that's what I was going to say. That's why I'm telling you that I'm not great at this, because
how you can know when Kevin is like kind of phasing out or like thinking about something else is when someone's like, and Kevin. Yeah,
like, and you snap to attention. You snap to attention, right?
In fairness, what's interesting is that Kevin, this is a good and bad trait. What Kevin is thinking about is something legitimately very helpful for work that is on his brain at the moment.
Right. I'm not planning a vacation or something.
No, but it's also I could see that being.
But if you're an advisor, right, and you're with the client, you're on the phone with the client, you're on a Zoom meeting with the client, nothing else matters at that moment. Focus on them.
All right. Next one up. Own your failures.
Okay.
So every business makes mistakes. We make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does. But how we hold ourselves accountable for that, how we react to that, really shapes the client's perception of how good our service is. Here's an interesting stat for you. Roughly 61% of customers say they would switch to a new brand after one bad experience.
Wow, one.
Yeah. So you, for example,
With
if
the
you were
Ritz.
feeling really put off by this comment at the Ritz, may say, next time I'm going to try the Peninsula. Next time I'm going Four Seasons, whatever it is.
Right.
But that's a stat by Zendesk. I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is.
I think the two big ones for me are when people are either defensive about a mistake they've made or nonchalant about the mistake. Defensive, saying, that it was not, that was more on, you probably should have taken some action on your side. That's not something that we really handle. Nonchalant, being like, it's not, we'll move on from this. It's not really a big deal. We've had both here as a company and working with various vendors. There's one vendor right now that we're in the market to replace because of their nonchalant attitude towards repeated mistakes.
Right.
But yeah, those are biggies. I think when you have a mistake or a perceived mistake on the part of the client, we go over and above both in apologizing, but making sure it's resolved and then we have good energy about it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times it's, you have to fall on that sword and you just have to say, I'm sorry, we made a mistake, right? And this is our bad and here's how we're going to fix it.
Yeah, even if it's only partially your fault.
Exactly. Like it doesn't benefit you to fight that fight sometimes.
Yeah, it doesn't benefit you to say, well, we probably could have read the agreement more closely, but really on your side, no, just, right. Next time we should have read it more closely.
That's a good one. Okay. Here's my next one. And I think it relates to what you're talking about. So on this vacation, we stayed at two different hotels. So we stayed at the Ritz, right, which was great. We stayed at the Shinola Hotel, which is in downtown Detroit, right? I have a Shinola watch on for anyone who is a fan. And when we got to that hotel, we checked in early and they let us in. We went to the room, and in the room, there was a bottle of champagne in the room. And there was a card that said, Mrs. John. I don't know, Mrs. John seems weird to me, but it said Mrs. John. So happy that you're back with us. Happy anniversary. And a bottle of champagne and like 2 champagne flutes. And I was like, oh, Michelle, we're in the wrong room. This is not our room, right? So I called down and I say, hey, I just want to let you know, like, there's a bottle of champagne here and a little note for someone that's not us. And are we in the right room? And first off, they made a mistake, right? Like, they made a mistake putting us in a room that they had already planned for someone on their stay, right? Which is like, they're not own, and they didn't own it. Instead, she said, well, I thought I was doing you a favor by letting you check in early. And I was like, yeah. I said, we're fine. But I just don't want someone coming knocking on this door and thinking that like this is supposed to be their room. There's a bottle of champagne and a note for someone else and about their anniversary, and it's not us. And then she said, I was doing you a favor by getting you checked in early. And I was like, this is like just poor service. So mine is, attitude is everything. And I know that everyone says that, but like she had a little bit of an attitude about it. And I don't think you can be great at service and customer service if you have an attitude. Even like an inkling of it, it just rubs people the wrong way. And I love that hotel. I think it's a really cool hotel if you've ever stayed there, but that was just not a great experience.
Yeah, a rough trip.
I had a rough trip.
I'm seeing some commonality here, though. Are you giving off some attitude to these people?
Am I the common denominator? But first off, we're like splurging, staying at these really cool hotels, and you just kind of expect a certain level of service, and we didn't see it. Anyway.
All right. Mine is to, for at least your top tier clients, to adapt your communication to their preferences. And I don't say that for every client. Like when we talk about having service models, part of the reason for that is so that you can be regimented and say that every client in this tier gets X number of calls, video meetings, in-person meetings, and so forth. But for your top client tier, I think it's important for everybody on the team to know their preferences for email, phone call, in-person, virtual, text, any other way that you're able to communicate with them, because like we're all pretty wired into our own preferences.
Yeah.
Like I have a hard preference for text over phone calls,
Agreed.
as do you.
Agreed.
Right?
Yep.
So if you were, I know there's certain things obviously that you can't text back and forth with, but if you were scheduling an appointment with me, shoot me a text.
Yes.
I'll get back with you within, if I have nothing else going on, within minutes, as opposed to if you left me a voicemail, I am not checking it.
I would love to know some stats on this because I feel like response rates for texts have got to be way higher. They're way easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think conversely to that, if you have a client who really is more formal, they're more used to in-person meetings, they're more used to getting letters from you. I asked an advisor one time that I worked with, I said, why, I just out of curiosity, why do you send so many letters to clients?
Right.
And he's like, just the way we've always done it. They expect it. They don't get my Christmas letter. And I'm like, a letter? There's no chance I would look at it.
Unless it was like handwritten, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, like that. But otherwise, I don't look at the mail. There's nothing ever that comes from me that's exciting.
No one's ever pumped to get the mail. So unless it's maybe like Amazon packages or something.
I saw a stat that it said millennials prefer live chat for customer service over every other communication channel.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean that much to you now because your prime clientele is not a millennial. But it does speak to the fact that short form communication is going to be more and more the norm. Short form written communication, whether it happens via text or an app of some sort, something we'll need to embrace.
That's a perfect segue into my next one. And my next one seems counterintuitive when you're thinking about service. But I do think it makes a difference. And that is help them help themselves. And I know you're thinking, what the heck does that mean? What I mean by that is there's some times where I don't want to talk to someone, where I don't want to even live chat with someone, but like I can look through an FAQ on your website, or I can, maybe as an advisor, you record videos of like how to access your account or how to, I don't know, whatever it is, right? Like help them help themselves sometimes so that they can have that resource available to them. You could have a whole library, and we have a video program where advisors outsource this kind of stuff to us. But you could create a whole series of videos that are helpful videos, things that you say on a regular basis that you can send to them, or you can have available on your website where they can help themselves. And I think that does impact the overall experience.
I like it. Building scalability as well. As you think about how to service more people with limited resources, video helps.
Yep.
The last one for me is that, in general, there are a lot of financial advisors out there who could take segmentation and service models more seriously. There are, again, some people on here who probably do that beautifully, but probably some people on here listening to this who are a little too reactive, who their service is dictated by, a certain number of days since they last called a client or when the client last reached out to them, that, especially in those top tiers, we probably need to segment more often for many people, and to be more diligent in how we're checking in on whether or not that service model is being executed. So for example, if part of your service model is that someone on your team is calling this person once a quarter, and that 2 in-person meetings are happening, at the end of the year, did these things in fact happen? Because there's a lot of teams who have great service models on paper and they are no way being executed.
Right. That's great. I mean, you're right. It's a great concept. It makes a ton of sense, but is it actually being done on a consistent basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's boring to talk about how often are you meeting with people, but this is the kind of regular communication that solves a lot of problems out there about keeping their growth expectations in line, about helping them understand what it is that you deliver in total, about what they're paying, about all these things, right? That the more you're in contact with them, the smoother it all is.
The more opportunities emerge.
That's right.
The more referrals happen, the more sourcing names happens, the more, you uncover that they have assets elsewhere and then you thought you had everything. Like that regular communication does make a big difference. That's a good one. All right, my last one here, I think this rounds out our 10, and this one kind of goes unsaid a little bit, but I hire great people, right? When you think about, hire people who, when they come in for an interview, like you could picture putting them in front of a client and they would be just fine. There's sometimes when you're interviewing people and stuff, they just have, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of an attitude or a chip on their shoulder or whatever. Like, don't hire those people. Hire people who maybe even come from the service industry and have had to do that. They're just really good at dealing with complaints, tough situations. I like I said before, I admire people who've worked in those industries. I've worked in that industry. It changes how you engage with people. It gives you a different perspective that a lot of other people who've never worked and had to serve someone else, they don't have that.
Yeah. And as consumers, we see the good and the bad. You had some bad examples there. I thought about it the other day when we were at the beach. We were playing, one of the little mini golf courses.
Yep.
And as we were out there, a storm rolls in. So we go up under the shelter of this cabana hut thing, and we're chatting up the young lady who was working there. And I thought, I don't know what she would do at our company, but she would really fit in well.
Yeah.
Just enjoyable, conscientious.
Yes.
And I'm like, you can teach the hard skills.
Yes.
And I think that's a lesson that we have learned over the years, is that if someone meets the qualifications on paper, that's that's not as important as somebody who meets the qualifications in conversation.
Yes.
Like if you like them when you're talking to them, that's a huge deal.
It is.
I mean, it's not to say that they have to be just like you. You want some, diversity and opinion there, but it is that if they're going to be in a service role, you have to enjoy their company.
Yeah. You have to think about it like a client can't dread getting on a call with them.
Somebody can go and get licensed.
Yes.
They can't go and get a personality. That should be a quote card.
Oh, is that your new quote? Yeah.
I think that's,
We'll
right
put
there.
it as like a reel. We'll make it cool. Put a little video behind it.
But,
you can't get a new personality.
you can't. It's very hard, at least.
Well, and I think it goes back to like a lot of the personalities ingrained in you, and it's from your experiences and life experiences. And if they've worked at a job where they've had to deal with that, they've had to be face to face with customers who sometimes have issues, right? Yeah, you learn a different skill set that's not taught in any sort of school ever.
So, gang, if you haven't thought about it as of late, our coaching program is a great fit right now when there's so much in flux. When there's a lot of market volatility out there, coaching is a way to help you be your best self. Mm-hmm. It's a way for you to do those tough activities on a regular basis, whether you really feel like it or not, because there's accountability there. Mm-hmm. So when you're thinking about those actions either being team-focused or service-related or marketing-focused, when you've got somebody on our team who's there to say, hey, Kevin, we talked about these 3 things last time. How much progress did we make?
Right.
Let's push the pace. You're going to do more with the help of a coach than you would do on your own.
It's like having a personal trainer, right? Like if it's rather like, hey, yes, I signed up for a gym membership. Cool. Well, what about when you have that personal trainer who's like waiting for you and you have an 11 o'clock and they're waiting on you. And when you're there, they're going to make sure it's a good workout.
Yeah, for sure. So if you haven't done it in a while, take us up on a coaching consultation. We'd be happy to chat with you to see if there's a fit. Otherwise, thanks for joining, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks, everyone.